Hey, Magic fans, welcome back. This is Capnclyde speaking on Capnclyde's MTG, and today we're here to do Ready Red for the limited format for Forgotten Realms. So let's get right into it. And remember, like, subscribe, hit the notification bell, put some comments down below, tell me what you think, and let me know if I'm on track. Feed that YouTube algorithm, get a little more views for the channel. So, in today's episode, we're going to go over Limited Red. So let's get her started, guys. So to start off with here, we have the red planeswalker, Zariel. 2 red, 2 for a 4 loyalty planeswalker, +1 to creatures you control, get +1/+0 and gain haste on their turn. Not too shabby. The 0 of making a 1/1 red devil that deals 1 damage when it dies to any target is probably the best thing this card has going for it, just because for 4 mana it can pump out blockers all day long. -6 gives you an emblem that at the end of combat you can untap a target creature you control, and it gets an extra combat phase. That's okay. It could probably be very good as well. It's a planeswalker. I'd probably play it, but honestly, it might not do enough to even be good enough, depending on what your deck's made out of, because you're really gonna have to defend it, as it can't defend itself. So, moving right along. Next, we have the next mythic, the Inferno of Star Mounts. So 2 red and 4 for a 6/6 flyer, can't be countered, has flying, has haste, and has fire breathing. And whenever its power and gets +1/+0, when its power becomes 20 this way, you can deal 20 damage to any target. I seriously doubt you'll be killing anybody with this, with the red pluses, but the 6 mana 6/6 flying haste can't be countered with fire breathing is probably good enough to just whoop somebody in about 3 turns. So yeah, definitely must play and phenomenal. Flame Skull, 3 mana, 3/1 flyer. It can't block, but the rejuvenation ability of it to die and exile top card of your library and get to play this again or the card on top of your library is really good. Just the fact that it's a flyer that's 3/1 that keeps coming back. I can't say it enough in these video guys. Flying is a premium in this set. There's not a lot of it, so if you got something that flies or something that can block flying, you probably should be putting it in your deck. Not to mention it never really dies, and it could actually draw you to something even better. Moving right along, we have the Hobgoblin Bandit Lord. Uh, 2 red and 1 for 2/3. Other goblins get +1/+1. Red and tapping it, for every goblin that comes into play this turn, you can actually deal damage to any target equal to those number of goblins. Seems okay, unless you get really lucky and just draft buttloads of goblins. I don't see this being a good card to play. It's mana restrictive at 2 red, with 3 on the butt. It's very easy to kill by almost all removal spells. The tap ability almost will never come into play, and giving other goblins +1/+1s is okay, but there's not big goblins in this set that's going to be worthwhile. I just don't think this is a card you should play as a rare. I mean, if you want to draft it just for giggles or whatever, but the odds of you having enough goblins to make this work and limited, probably not going to happen. So I'd probably pass on this one, guys. Zorn. So this thing's great all around. A red and 2 for a 3/2 creature is already great. Its ability to make treasure tokens, an extra treasure token every time you make one, is really powerful. This will draw a removal spell faster than you can shake a stick at. Um, so if nothing else, even if you're not using that many treasure synergies, just playing this thing on the first glance is probably enough for the opponent to fire off a fast, quick, in a hurry removal spell to kill this little guy. So, and if you do have treasure synergies, he's just the bomb. So, there's that. Moving right along, we have Delina Wildmage, red and 3 for a 3/2. She seems okay. I don't like the fact she has to attack to get her ability off. Probably means she's gonna die when she swings, unless you have something to give her first strike, or let her come back in, or to get back out the graveyard, or if you have some removal spell, or something to get her in for a clean hit. I mean, she's a fine card to draft, although I often don't think she's going to be played. If she is played, she's probably going to get killed more often than not. So, something to think about. Yeah, check this little fella out over here. Anyway, my magical editing skills. Zalto, Fire Giant Duke. So, for 5 mana, you get a 7/3. Trample. Whenever he has dealt damage, you venture into the dungeon. This card is perfectly fine. I would draft it 7/3. Yeah, it dies. But if they use a removal on it, it basically you get to venture in a dungeon for 5. Swinging in can be really cool, especially as trample. The real problem with this is because it's so cheap, you could easily waste 5 mana on it and then kill it with a 2 mana spell, which is not good for you. And because it's got such a small butt, it could be very hard to keep it alive if you want to block with it. So keep that in mind. I would probably still draft it, but the playability of this is probably a little on the lower side, to be honest with you. Meteor Swarm. This is one of the prime red removal spells, guys. I'm not going to lie to you. 3 red and X to deal 8 damage divided among any number of target creatures or planeswalkers. So basically for 4 mana, you can do 8 damage to something. That's still cheaper than the black removal spell, -11 for 6. And 8 damage will probably kill about anything. But after that, if you get to 5 mana, now you can kill 2 things. You get to 6 mana, you can probably kill 3. Like, this is a premium removal spell. 3 red is really hard to come by, so you have to be careful. But this can change the outcome of a game, because it is very powerful, guys. Not lying. I would definitely draft this, especially if you're in red, and I would definitely play it. I played it in a couple of my pools, and when I fired this thing off, it was devastating. So next we have Wish. This card is not draftable. You get a card from outside the game, and you can play it this turn. It's a sorcery, which means you got to have 3 mana for this, plus the mana in your sideboard. If the card's in your sideboard, you want to wish for it, you probably should just be playing it. Now, outside that, if you want to draft this to put in one of your decks later, yeah, sure, go for it. But as far as in limited play, this is a dud, and I wouldn't play it. The Orbit Dragonkind, this is pretty good. Red and 1. You can tap it to make 2 mana of any color to cast any dragon or activate their abilities. Plus, you can sacrifice it to go searching for dragons on top of your deck. This is a great mana rock if you have dragons in your deck. Um, if you don't, it's really a dud because it all revolves around dragons, right? So I played a couple limited games where I drafted this with the hopes of using it and never got a dragon, which meant yeah, I got a cool rare draft, but it would have been better if I drafted an uncommon or even a common that was playable because this just didn't do anything because I didn't have any dragons. So something to keep in mind, guys. Next year, you have Binion of the Mighty. So it's a Kobold with minutes. It's an 0-1, has pack tactics. Whenever you attack with this at 6 or greater, you can put a dragon card from your hand onto the battlefield tapped and attacking. Do not draft this unless you just want to put it in one of your decks later. It's an 0-1. It dies very easy. Pack tactics is sometimes hard to get off, especially when this thing has no power. Plus, you have to have the dragon in hand. The odds of that are also very slim. Um, yeah, this is not a playable card, guys. Sorry. I mean, maybe in some sealed or other kind of deck or something like that, but I wouldn't play this in limited. Rust Monster. Now this is a baller right here, guys. Red and 2 for a 2-1 with first strike. This card is great filler space. If you're doing the treasure thing or have any other artifacts, you can make this 4-1 first striker or more. Uh, this thing can be housed. It can just kill people out of nowhere. Especially if you have a Zora on the table or a Horde Robber that's been racking up treasure tokens for you. But if you don't have a lot of artifacts or way to generate treasures, 3 mana for a 2-1 first striker with no ability to pump actually is bad. So this is kind of an all-in or an all-out. I wouldn't draft this without having artifacts to sack to it or a way to generate treasures. Now, if you can generate those, this card's a no-brainer. But if you can't generate them, this is actually a bad card for 3 mana. So it's actually situational. You guys keep that in mind when you draft, guys. Burning Hands, great removal spell, 2 for 2 damage. If it's green, it's 6. I definitely would probably start this in almost any deck. If you have better removal than this, though, we can always sideboard it, but this is definitely a draftable card and very playable. Magic Missile, same thing. 3 damage to anything, plus you can divide it up. I would probably start this depending on what kind of removal I have in my deck. Worst case scenario, I would sideboard it just in case I run across a weenie deck so I can just pick off 2 or 3 things at once. But 3 damage for 3 mana is just fine. Plus, you can target the opponent, so it's not like you can't blow the opponent off the table with this. So this is definitely a draftable card. Hulking Bugbear, 2 red and 1 for a 3/3 haster. Not good enough. The mana restriction is really high. It's only a 3/3. Most things will kill this. It's just going to be a simple trade. The haste doesn't really matter very often. So yeah, I'm just not a fan of this, and often I pass it up in drafts. The Red Dragon, so 2 red and 4 for a 4/4 flyer. It deals 4 damage to each opponent when it comes into play. This thing's a bomb. It's just way too good, guys. I mean, basically you're spending 6 mana to do 4 damage to your opponent, and if they have a removal spell, make them discard a card, basically. So, yeah, it's just way too good. And if you have some way to get this back out of your graveyard, then woo daddy. Get it back out of the graveyard, venture into the dungeon or some silly nonsense, play it again, zap it for 4. If you have a feigned death, let it come back into play, zap him for 4 again. It's just, this is so much stuff with this. If you're playing the white card with that white enchantment that makes you blink a monster, yeah, blink this every turn and just zap them in the head for 4 damage. After about 5 turns of that, they'll be dead. Um, yeah, this card is really good for 6 mana. It's probably one of the best dragons, I think, cost-wise with what it does. I would definitely draft this and play this on a regular. Critical hit. So a red and 2 gives something double strike. When you roll a natural 20, return it to your hand. It's okay. I have drafted it to play it before, and it has done some things like killing creatures and whatever because of double strike. But I've almost never picked this thing back up. And to be honest with you, more often than not, I'd rather just have a removal spell than this. So I would probably skip drafting it unless you have no other choice because I don't think it's really playable. Goblin Morningstar. This is an all-star. I play this in any deck that has red in it. I mean, for red and 2, you basically get a 2/1 Goblin. And when that Goblin dies, you still have the Morningstar, which means you can give anything on your field +1/+0 and trample. And trample matters, guys. It gets damage through. So all-star, draft it all day long. Chaos Chandler. 4 mana for a 4/3 that when you attacks, you get to roll die 20 and exile cards off top your deck and play them. Powerhouse, guys. Just a powerhouse. I play this thing all day long. It basically lets you draw cards, plus it'll kill a creature more often than not. And if you get a couple free swings with it, Lord, just the snowball effect of how far ahead you get is just ridiculous. So definitely play the Chaos Chandler. You find some prisoners. So honestly, I don't like this card, but I have played it. If you don't have a way to destroy artifacts, this card's kind of a must because the backup plan of exiling the top 3 of their deck and playing one of their cards later is fine. But this is really just a destroy artifact card in my opinion. And if you don't have a way to destroy artifacts, because there's good ways to do it in red, this isn't really one of them. But if you don't have a good way to destroy artifacts, this is a great backup plan. Tiger Tribe Hunter, 5 mana for 4/4 with trample. Pack Tactics, you can sacrifice another creature, and when you do, the Tribe Hunter deals damage equal to the sacrificed creature's power to target creature. I don't like this thing. I think it's bad. You're sacrificing your creatures, well, where if you're attacking with them anyway, it shouldn't matter. I don't like it for 5 mana. I'd rather play something else. I don't think this is good enough unless you just have to have creature for filler space. But if you're playing 2 colors, there's better creatures than this thing, and I probably wouldn't play it, guys. Just to be honest with you. Battle Cry Goblin. Now this thing is house. So 2 mana for a 2/2, already great on rate. For a red and 1, all your goblins get +1/+0. The pack tactics that give you an extra goblin is amazing as well, because then he pumps the extra goblins. Also late game for 4 mana, he comes out as a 3/2 haster. Like, I can't say enough good things about this guy. He's not legendary, so you can have more than one of him. Like, it's just bonkers, guys. If you're playing red, even if you don't have any goblins, I would play this guy. And I've done it before too. Trust me, he is just a winner on all fronts. Can't say enough good things about this card. You see a pair of goblins, 3 mana to pump the team 2/0 or make 2 goblins. It's fine. I've played it in my decks before. It's also very underwhelming. Depends on what your deck is doing. If you're going wide, this card's great. If you're not going wide, this card's probably not so hot. But more often than not, I haven't played this card. I've only played it once or twice and often sideboarded out. So I'd probably say no, depending on how your deck is formatted. Dragon's Fire. Best removal spell in set. So 2 mana, 3 damage to any creature or planeswalker. Plus, if you have a dragon, it deals damage on how powerful that dragon is by revealing it if the dragon's on the field. So this thing is just amazing. It's a great common. Some of the best removal in the set. Definitely play it. Armored Veteran. 2 mana, red and 1 for a 2/2 that when you equip it, it has menace. It's okay. But unless you are really heavy on equipment stuff, this guy is just not good enough. The only time this guy is really good is if you play in black and you're playing an amulet that gives your guy Death Touch, and has the opponent lose 2 life, you gain 2 life, because then they have to block him with 2 creatures, which means that you get to kill both of them because Death Touch is 1 damage to each and kills them. More often than not, I have never played this guy. There's just better things out there for 2 mana. Boots of Speed, again, it's a fine card for 1 red and equipping to give haste and +1/+0. But I would definitely just rather draw something else. This is kind of more like a dead card. I'd rather have a creature than this. I'm this guy is at least a 2/1 for 2. I'd rather have that. You're gonna spend the same mana here, except you only get +1 in haste. I'd rather have that guy than Boots of Speed. I don't think Boots of Speed is playable, guys. Unexpected Windfall. It's a decent card draw spell. The best thing about this is it creates 2 tokens that are treasures. But you do have to discard a card, and it does cost 4 mana, which is your whole turn. But if you've got no other ways to draw, and this is your only option, it is playable. But even then, I don't think I would play it. I have never played this card. So it's up to you guys how you're feeling about it, but I would say no. Price of Loyalty. Red and 2, it's your basic grab and snag. You grab their creature, give it haste, punch them with it. If you use a treasure token, it gets +2/+0. Again, I would sideboard this. I would not draft it actively to be played in my deck because it's just not good enough. Goblin Javelineer. This is a fine 1 red 1/1 with haste. I might play one of them. I probably wouldn't play two. But more often than not, guys, to be honest with you, I wouldn't even play this guy. He does 1 damage to any target that blocks it, so he can kill a 2/2 if they block him, but not if he blocks them. So for 1 red, there's just a lot better things you could be doing, like putting out better equipment to equip up the better creatures you have. Because if you lay this on me, unless you equip him or do something weird to him, I'm going to let him hit me all day long because I don't care about 1 point of damage. I got 20 turns to deal with him. So I would say not to play this. Hoarding Ogre. Now this thing's pretty good. 4 mana for a 3/3 is a little low, but the ability to attack with it and create treasures is a big upscale. Plus, if you can attack with it and manage to kill something with it while generating those treasures, that's even better. So I would definitely play the Hoarding Ogre. Jaded Sellsword. 4 mana for a 4/3 is fine. If you have treasures, he gets haste and first strike. If you're playing treasures, he's a pretty good guy. But more often than not, to be honest with you, I've actually not started him before, even when I have had him, because I had better creatures at 4 mana that did different things. He is playable, but I just don't think he's good enough at what his rate is. Because a treasure token thing can sometimes be too hard, and to be honest, I probably want to save my treasures to cast something on 5 instead of this on 3, because it just dies too easy to blocking. Me personally. Brazen Dwarf is fine. It's a 1/3 for 2. Whenever you roll 1 more die, it deals 1 damage to each opponent. It's okay, but if your opponent has any sort of aggro, this thing is not going to be good enough to stop them. Yeah, you can deal 1 damage to them, but I've found more often than not this is not good enough, so I normally don't play it. Swarming Goblins. Now this thing's a house, guys. 5 mana for a 4/3. You get at least 1 more goblin, so basically you get 5/4 worth of power and toughness for 5 mana, which is fine. And you could get even more than that. Plus it goes wide because you normally can get 2 goblins out of it. So you're basically getting 6/5 for 5. But it's divided up between 3 creatures. So this card's really good, and I definitely would play it on the high end. Fireball. This also is very good. Great removal. 5 mana, 5 damage. You may even be able to zap your opponent for 2 without you taking any damage. So it's good removal. I definitely would play it in red. Improvised Weaponry. Now this is better removal than the 5 damage one, only because early game on turn 3, you can kill their early targets that they lay on the battlefield, that may venture into the dungeon or do some other weird thing that you don't want them to do. Plus get a treasure, which means it actually mana accelerates you. So on 3, you can cast this, and then on 4, lay a 5-drop, which is devastating. So I like this card a lot. I think it's really good. The only time I ever take this card out of my deck is if their creatures are too big for this to kill, which is few and far between, to be honest with you, but it has happened. But I do draft this actively because I think it's a good removal spell because you get treasures. Also, too, it says any target, you can zap your opponent. So, if not, all else fails, blow somebody up in the face. Earth Cult Elemental. This is a great card. Late game, it can be very uneffectful because of the whole sacrifice permanent thing. Gotta be careful with that. But a 6 mana for a 6/6 is just fine. So yeah, nothing more to say about that. The sacrifice of permanent thing is just a bonus. Kick in the door, 1 red, put a +1/+1 counter on a creature till the end of turn. Can't be blocked by walls. Venture into the dungeon. Do not play this. This is terrible. The +1/+1 counter is fine. Venture in the dungeon, yeah, that's cool. There's better ways to do it than this. For the love of God, don't draft this card. You come to a Null Camp, a red 1. Intimidate. Up to 2 target creatures can't block this turn, or fend them off. Target creature gets +3/+1 to end a turn. Again, this is very bad. Don't play it. Don't draft it. It's just not good enough. Hobgoblin Captain. I draft these things and play them in limited in droves. All it takes is 2 of these bad boys, and you're swinging in for 6. And then you got 3/1 first strikers that are hard to stop. This thing is a powerhouse. I definitely suggest using it. The only time I would start sideboarding this guy's out if I'm playing against somebody who's got a lot of magic missiles who can just wreck my world. So yeah, this is a great card. Draft it, play it, you'll like it. Dueling Rapier, this is pretty good if you have a high aggro deck. The first time you play it, you can make your creatures big. The equip cost, though, is obviously astronomical. So you're really just doing a one red, equip a creature, and hope to God it don't die. Uh, so more often than not, I wouldn't play it. I have seen people play it and it be effective, but it can also be a very big hindrance being able to not equip it unless you have 4 mana, and you could just have another creature. So Plundering Barbarian. So this is a must draft if you're in red. A red and 2 for a 2/2. You can destroy an artifact or create a treasure. Like I mentioned before, if you don't have a good way to kill artifacts, you need them, which is why you have to play certain cards. But this card, you can destroy artifacts. You can make a 2/2 at the same time, which is phenomenal. And if they're not playing heavy artifacts, you can make a treasure token and ramp yourself so that on turn 4 you can lay a 5-drop. Again, just bananas. The ability to have that kind of synergy and the ability to pick what you want to do is great on a card, especially as a common. I would play 2 or 3 of these, probably 4 honestly if I could. But yeah, this is a great card. Valor Singer, this card's okay. For 3 mana, it's a good 2/3. Basically, if you have nothing else, it's a 3/3 that can attack, so that's cool. Um, I think it's a great card. It's probably one of the first cards I would take out, depending on what kind of deck I'm against and what I'm running against. Um, but to start with, this card is great. I would definitely suggest running it. I probably draft 1 or 2 of them. Um, it's okay. I mean, it doesn't do all the great things that you'd want in life, but as a 1 or 2 of, it can win you the game. So next here we have Barbarian class, 1 red. If you roll 1 or more die, you roll that many die and ignore the lowest roll. That's okay if that's the kind of thing you're into. If you do have a lot of dice rolling, that could be very detrimental to your opponent. Maybe you might want to run this. And then for 2, when you roll 1 or more dice, target creature gets +2/+0 and gains menace. That can be cool. 3 mana, creatures you control have haste. That's also okay. But to be honest with you, all these separate or even all these together are very underwhelming, in my personal opinion. Um, so honestly, I wouldn't play Barbarian class. Even if I had 4 or 5 dice rollers, that's only 4 or 5 times I'm gonna get to use this for 1 red. Plus 2/+0, well, again, only 4 or 5 times. And 3 mana, all your creatures having haste, sometimes doesn't matter because maybe you're in defense mode. I think this is one of the worst classes to play in the uncommon slot. So honestly, I just wouldn't play it at all. That's my personal opinion, guys. Alright, guys, and finally here we have the Den of the Bugbear. You know it, you love it. 1 red mountain man land. It makes a 3/2 goblin. When it attacks, you create another 1/1 red goblin with it that's tapped and also attacking. This is a powerhouse. It's a great way to get in there when it's late game and you've managed to weed out all your opponent's creatures and they weeded out all yours. You can activate the den, swing in, and start generating some creatures. Again, all the man lands are great. If you have a man land in a color that you're playing, you gotta play it. There's no reason not to. So, guys, with all that said, thank you for joining me today. And as always, for your limited experience this weekend, I hope this is helping you and have some fun and enjoy it. I know I'll see you guys, hopefully, some of you, at the local LGSs across the table drafting and playing some sweet Forgotten Realms D&D. See you next time, guys.